racing and thoroughbred breeding industry has a funny habit of creating longevity in its legends. Think Bart Cummings, Tommy Smith, Jim Houlihan, to name a few. And in the first of our Bred to Win Legends series, we hear from 92-year-old Hall of Fame trainer Neville Begg, who only recently has been breeding Group 1 winners.
Please welcome Neville Begg into the Hall of Fame.
But the Byron rule is too good. And the Byron rule first and then he's for second in the derby. Dark Eclipse is the leader. Joy is jumping out of the ground, but Dark Eclipse won the slipper. And this 3-year-old champion goes on to win the Doncaster, a length to ring true.
Written by in front, 50 metres to go, and he remains unbeaten.
Neville, first of all, congratulations on the OAM, of course the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to horse racing as a trainer, and you've previously been inducted into the Australian Racing Hall of Fame. I mean, these are thoroughly deserved honours, and I guess it is wonderful when you look back to really think how people appreciate what you've done for the industry.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. It's a great honour, and I'm very humbly pleased to accept it. You know, it's unexpected, but it was very nice.
Yes, the segment we're calling, you know, Bred to Win Legends, and you're obviously a legend of the industry in terms of not only Sydney but nationally, with the amount of time you've been involved, starting at the age of 14 as a stable boy for Maurice McCartan. You were with Maurice for 22 years. What did you first like about being around racehorses in those days?
Well, Carolyn, I was actually brought up with stables in our backyard. I was born in Newcastle. My grandfather was a trainer. Two of my uncles were jockeys, and one was quite a prominent jockey. I was involved in horses from the time I was born. I was sort of riding work when I was 12, 13, really, at Newcastle. So, I was always going to be in it.
And of course, Todman, you know, he was with that time when you were with Maurice McCartan in 1957, the first Golden Slipper winner, and you have a wonderful press clipping of Todman at his first start here at Royal Randwick. The margin was incredible, 10 lengths or so. What was it like being around a horse such as Todman as a young man in the industry? I mean, he was, you know, the equivalent of a Winx in his day, such a popular horse with a huge legacy.
Well, Mr McCartan received him to train as a yearling, and I broke him in, and I rode him all the time right up till he raced. But I had to ride him in a big saddle because he tried to drop you, he tried to throw you off. Almost talking about a couple of weeks before he raced, I rode him in a big saddle. And anyway, he turned out his first run in a race, he ran an Australasian record for 1,000 metres, and he won by a huge margin. That was the first year of the slipper. And they never had any lead-up races then, so we entered him in an open class welter, which he won, and we had another good filly at the same time, a filly called Concert Star, Star Kingdom filly, and she also won an open welter, and they run first and third in the slipper. He only had one other start. He ran the size produce, and Tulloch beat him. Tulloch had won the VRC size, and in those days they backed up on the Champagne Stakes, was run on the Wednesday, and it's 6 furlongs, 1,200 metres, and he beat Tulloch in that, and then he was rested after that. And people don't remember, he did win the Canterbury Guineas, it was 9 furlongs, you know, so he could run a bit of a journey. In those days, here at Randwick, there'd be 25 two-year-old trials before they ever raced, and then they'd go to Canterbury and have another set of trials, probably about 15, and then they'd have to sort them out for the Breeders' Plate and the Jim Crack Stakes.
The actual slipper itself, that sprint trip, and now we look at so many stallions where most of these big stallion deals are done initially. It is what is driving a lot of the industry and the breeding industry.
They're buying 2-year-olds now that before they've run the slipper, looking at the potential of them turning out to be slipper winners and becoming stallions.
Yep. And in 1967, you became a trainer in your own right here at Royal Randwick. How was it in those days finding owners? You're obviously buying at the sales. I guess you would have been given a number of horses as well. And I guess there were a lot of breed to race owners in those days.
I started out with 4 horses. I was fortunate enough to win a race very early in my career, and I won a double early. I started to pick up a few horses from there, and that's when I fortunately was granted the stables at Randwick, and I had a lot more boxes to fill. I was fortunate. I got called to go to the AJC office one day, and I had to front the committee, and I thought, what have I done wrong, you know? And I went down and I said to the desk, how do I get to the committee room? Well, you go up the stairs there and up to your right. And you know, I got to the committee room and there's one committeeman there. I said, yes sir, what do I want it for? He said, oh Mr Begg, we'd like you to take over another stable, and there'll be 2 horses there. So I said, oh yes sir, that'd be great, you know. Turned out the 2 horses was a horse called Divide and Rule, yes, who was owned by Mr Roden, and the other one was a filly called Affectionate, who was owned by Mr Frank Thompson. I was fortunate enough, Divide and Rule won the AJC Derby, and Affectionate won the Queensland Oaks, so to walk into a stable, get 2 horses, and one's won a Derby and the other one won an Oaks, that's a pretty good effort.
And of course, Divide and Rule was your first Group 1 winner. What do you remember about that major success? I'm sure it obviously then puts you much more in the spotlight as an up-and-coming trainer.
It certainly helped me along a lot. I trained a few for Mr Stan Fox for a little while, not many. Mr Lloyd Foyster came along, and I had quite a lot of horses from the Foyster family, and I had a fairly good success with it. I had a very good horse called Planet Kingdom and a mare called Gypsy Moss. And then later on, I became the trainer for Gore Eastad, Mr Quanko. I had quite a bit of success for them. Well, even from the time I started, well, you take Todman, he was owned by the breeder. Take horses like Fine and Dandy, Time and Tide, all those very, very good horses, they were all owned by the breeders.
And it was pretty hard to get past Tommy Smith in those days as the champion Sydney trainer. You were runner-up to TJ on 9 occasions, which is an incredible effort in itself. And I know he had an enormous respect for you. What was your relationship like with Tommy?
Yes, thanks very much. Yeah, well, he was very good. You know, I never had any differences with him. I knew he was a champion trainer, and he was always had quite a lot more horses than I had, you know, but and he was hugely successful, but I thought I was doing quite all right to run second.
1978-79 was a kind of golden era for Neville Begg as a trainer. You had 88 winners in that time. Obviously there were a lot less race meetings then, but what was your favourite era as a trainer?
Oh, I think in the early 80s, Emancipation came along, and we had great success with her, and I had quite another lot of young horses. One year I think I won 35 2-year-old races one year. Although I did have a couple of fillies that won 5 on end, so that added to the numbers quite good.
And of course Dark Eclipse, another one, a daughter of Baguette, who won the 1980 Golden Slipper as well. A lot of the fillies you had, and obviously fillies we see now to this day, a trainer such as Ronnie Quinton or Guy Walter. Some people really have an affinity with fillies. Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think that it's all goes with the training, you know, whether you're hard on them or easy on them and that, you know. Fillies are a little different than colts. I never treated them all that much differently, although I used to lead them off a pony a lot, you know. I used to pony them a lot, you know, and keep the riders off them, and they seem to thrive on that. Dark Eclipse, she was retained by the breeder, Murray Bain, Mr Murray Bain. He retained her to race, and I was lucky enough to win the slipper, and Ron Quinton, who rode for me for over 20 years, we still get on very well. He's training a couple for me now. We've reversed the places, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So. He's now trainer and you're owner. Yeah, owner-breeder with some of them, I know. Of course, Barramel Lodge, you know, that was the name of your training stables after the stud where Todman was bred. Of course, November Rain, a wonderful filly, Dalmatia, the Epsom winner, I loved Dalmatia. And then I really loved Emancipation. So talking about one of my favourite horses of that era was this beautiful grey Millie, as she was known, and Graham, of course, we know was strapping her or caring for her as a stable staff member. But she was a feisty girl, wasn't she? I mean, people love these mares, such as Sunline, and you know, that have this real character, don't they?
She's like a big gelding, you know. She's like a big gelding, but she'd give you a bump or bite or kick you or kick. She used to kick the walls at the stable and kick the place to pieces, you know. But anyway, she was a great race mare, and as I said, Graham looked after all his life and travelled with her and did a great job with her.
Of course, she won the two George Riders, the Doncaster, 6 Group 1s, a further 10 other stakes races, and had those duels with the young bucks, Sadapper. That was always great in that era. But as a broodmare, I find it so fascinating. You know, a lot of people say, oh, the good race mares don't throw good horses. Well, they do. She had Royal Pardon, of course, a Group 2 in those days, Frank Packer Plate winner as one of her first foals. He was a 3-time stakes winner. And we know a few stallions throw one as good as themselves. But as a broodmare, her daughters, you know, 7 foals only. She had Virage through the 7-time stakes winner Avenue and a 2-time Group 1 winner Virage to Fortune. The Suffragette through Railings, who won a Metropolitan Caulfield Cup. Others to this day, Prague, Stratum Star, Ragis, Subadar. It's an incredible influence that wonderful mare had, isn't it?
Yeah, she did. You know, she went to New Zealand to be served by Vice Regal, who was one of the leading stallions over there at the moment. That's the sire, I think, of Royal Pardon, if I'm right. Unfortunately, she died foaling over there. She had a couple of foals and did very well with them, as you said, you know, but the Virage, the Fortune, all those, all good gallopers, you know.
But it's written by for Jordan Childs.
And some of the great racetrack scenes of the modern era are when your own Written By won the Blue Diamond Stakes in 2018, trained by your son Graham Begg, bred by you and part owned with your wife Yvonne. Just remind us about the Written By story. Graham also trained his sire Written Tycoon, and you bought Yao Chin, Written By's dam, for only $3,000.
I was up at the Scone sales, and I sort of was getting towards the end of the day, and I was going to walk up back to the hotel, and I looked down the park, and there's this grey filly down there, and I thought, I'll go and have a look at her, and I liked to look at her, and I followed her up to the ring, and she went in, and someone bid 1,000, 2,000, I said 3, and bang,
and that was
they knocked her down to me, you know.
Yeah.
So she's quite a good galloper too, although she only won one race maiden, but she run about 4 seconds in Sydney in the metropolitan area, and of course she's turned out quite a useful broodmare. Every foal she's had has been a winner. Yeah. Written By is the main one, of course, but I know she's done very, very well.
Yeah, and explain how you feel. I mean, when you see now Written By, he's quite a quirky soul. I've seen him up at Widden Stud. He's an interesting sort of fellow. But when you see now him at stud, from that mare you bought for $3,000, from, you know, by the horse that your son trained, etc., how do you put that in words? I mean, it's hard to put in words, but it's what makes people love racing, isn't it? When you do that,
it's the magic of how things work out for you. You know, you never know where the next good one's coming from. Really, you know, you can have a yard full of horses, and the nondescript bloke down the back, he turns out the best horse in the stable, you know. That can happen, and she's been a good broodmare. She's now in foal the Zoo Star again, so.
You're now breeding to Written By as well. So I guess in this game, I know Bart Cummings and, you know, Tommy as they get older, you know, it keeps you young, doesn't it? When you're waiting for the next foal, the next crop of 2-year-olds, you know, you can't really get old, can you?
At 93.
You feel old sometimes, I'm sure. But
sometimes, yeah. But there's lots of ups and downs. You've got to take the good with the bad, you know, and there's things happen that you don't want to happen, and they do, and you can't avoid that. I enjoy it, and I follow the breeding, I go to the sales. I love looking at the pedigrees of the horses, and I kept my hands in my pockets at the moment.
It's hard, isn't it? I know.
A few months ago, and Sophia Ricketson, who sports the TJ Silks here.
How do you see, so racing in Sydney at the moment, you know, we need to try and keep next generations coming through, but I mean, I maintain it gets back to the horses, doesn't it? It gets back to the actual racing as a sport, as a business, as an industry. It captures us all, doesn't it?
I think the pony racing is a good concept. Not only the kids that are taking part in it, the kids that come along to watch, you know, and their mates are riding in the race, and that, I think that's a good concept myself.
And of course, at the end of racing, there's a lot of work being done now to rehome thoroughbreds as well. You've worked so closely with them all your life. They're an incredible breed, aren't they?
They are, yes. Well, a couple of my old horses have found very good homes. Old All Silent, he's got a very good home, and got a photo the other day of one of my old horses, Monopolise. He's 33.
Yep.
He's been well looked after and still alive. You know, he's a great old fella.
And as I said, of course, having new horses to look forward to keeps everyone young in this industry. What is it that you're most looking forward to in horses you've bred or you're racing in the coming months?
Carolyn, I've got too many.
It's a good answer.
But yes, I've got a couple of nice young horses. I've got a full brother that's written by, just come into training. He's a nice colt, and I've got another Star Witness colt who also called Donegal Bay. I like him very much. And I've got a Tornado filly in training, just going into training with Graham now, out of a half sister written by. So we've got a few young ones coming along, and I've got a Tornado colt on the ground out of the same mare. So we've got a few young ones to come along. So I've just got to last long enough to see them all.
Congratulations. Neville Begg, ladies and gentlemen.